So today we will talk about the different table manners and etiquettes practiced by French and Japanese cultures. While table manners and etiquette for Japan and France are quite different, they have some similarities, mostly being that they have upheld specific traditions of their cultures throughout the generations through their table mannerisms. What are table manners? A set of rules followed while eating and generally differ from culture to culture. Culture is defined by the communication textbook written by Adler, Rodman, and Dupree as the language, values, beliefs, traditions, and customs people share and learn. So we'll start by talking about the French table manners. You always want to keep your hands above the table, but not your elbows on the table. As Chevalier Carpus, a French language teacher for over 23 years, states, you should keep your hands at the table on each side of the plate in a relaxed manner. Between two bites, you should place your silverware at 4 and 8 o'clock, but not crossing or falling off the plate, and that will indicate that you are still eating, just taking a break. When you are done eating, you should place your silverware parallel to the right just slightly. Some other good basic table manners in France is that the men, it is customary for them to pull out the chairs for the women, and it is also good practice to be very complimentary of your host regarding their food, their decorations, and table placements, and to delicately wipe your lips with your napkin without leaving any food or lipstick on the napkin. According to Gardner Roberts, a French writer, if you're invited to a dinner party, you should always arrive 10 to 15 minutes late to allow your host or hostess plenty of time to get ready. And you should bring a small gift, such as a plant or a bottle of wine. And then you should always wait for your host or hostess to say bon appetit and begin eating themselves before you begin eating. When it comes to drinking in France, they are all about the wine. So as Chevalier Carpus says, you should be sure to know your wine glasses. So the small skinny glasses are for your white wines, and your larger rounder glasses are for red wines. And you should wait until everyone has their glass poured and the host or hostess gives a toast before you begin drinking. And it is also customary for the men to pour the wine glasses for the women. Now, if there's no men around, it is perfectly fine for the women to pour their own glasses. So now let's talk about Japanese table manners. They are big on giving thanks before and after their meals. So as Ashcraft, an author from Texas, but longtime resident of Osaka, Japan, says, before the meals, they place their hands together and bow slightly at their plates and say, forgive me if I say this incorrectly, itadakamiyasu, which means to receive. And when they're finished eating, they make the same gesture, but say, gochasa sama, which means thank you for the meal. Now, chopsticks are the main eating utensil in Japan, and as Polly, a blogger from Germany but lives in Tokyo and writes about all things Japan, states, if you're given wooden chopsticks, you should not rub them together when you break them apart. That is considered rude, and they also do not contain splinters, which is the big myth, but it's fine. It is also considered rude if you point with your chopsticks. And another thing, if you're eating a bowl of rice with your chopsticks, you do not want to place them straight up, as that is part of a Buddhist funeral ritual. And another Buddhist ritual that you don't want to do with your chopsticks is they place the cremated bones of their loved ones and they pass them around with their chopsticks. So you don't want to pass your food with chopsticks. Now, drinking in Japan, as Polly has some very good pointers. Japan, people do not like to drink from a bottle, so typically if they're given a bottle of beer, they will pour that into a glass, but they do not like to pour their own glass. So you would pour your friend's glass and they would pour your glass. And it's also customary to wait until everyone has a full glass poured before drinking and someone says kanpai, which means empty glass, before you take your first drink. So we talked about different cultural practices of two countries, France and Japan, and their table manners and etiquette. While France and Japan are vastly different culturally, they do share some similarities, such as announcing when to begin to eat and waiting for everyone's glass to be full before we begin drinking. But most of all, they have kept their cultures alive through their practices at the dinner table.